Good evening, everybody. Good to see you all. It is June 15th, 2023, and this is a meeting of the EETAC Envision Eugene Technical Advisory Committee. I'm Tiffany Edwards, the chair, and to get us started, I just want to audience participation. If there are folks, hard time seeing. Hang on one second. I'm gonna have to just move everybody for a second here. Okay.
We do not have any attendees.
Okay,
tonight.
Perfect. So I will just then remind the group that I'll keep a queue. If you have a comment or a question, just go ahead and raise your hand. I can actually see everybody at this point. So once I maximize this, I think it should be fine. So let's see, tonight we're going over the growth monitoring annual report, and we're going to have a discussion about future meetings. So
and
first,
I have a few comments to make before we adopt the minutes or approve the minutes.
Okay.
So I noticed today in the materials that we actually didn't have a quorum who voted on the February minutes at our March meeting. And so we need to go ahead and vote again for both the February and the March minutes. And the March minutes will be amended to reflect the fact that the February minutes didn't get adopted at that meeting because there wasn't a quorum voting at that time. So I'm going to make those updates, and so we need to have a motion to approve both the February minutes and March minutes as amended.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have any questions on that or want to make a motion?
I move to accept the February and March minutes as amended.
This is Howard. I'll second.
Okay, so just to clarify, so we're now voting on both months' minutes as a quorum collectively, correct? Based on Elena's explanation. And okay. All right. Sue has her hand up. Go ahead, Sue.
I wasn't here for the March meeting, or no, I guess it was the May meeting. So you're talking about February and March, not May.
Yeah, we didn't meet in May.
Okay. All right. Great. Thank you.
Okay. I'll go ahead and call for the vote. So all those in favor, hold on, just lost you all. Oh no.
I can still hear you, Tiffany.
This is so glitchy. I'm not sure what's happening. I'm just, oh my gosh. I'll go ahead and call for the vote. If you can see everybody, Elena, I'll let you. Okay. So all of those in favor, I am raising my hand in favor.
Okay, all in favor.
Okay. And then any opposed?
Nope.
And any abstentions?
We're good, thanks.
Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go on to our, well, I guess it looks like we have public comment, but you mentioned that there was nobody from the public that
There's not.
was tuning in. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over to Heather and Elena, and I'm going to work on trying to figure out how to make everything work. So with this different computer.
Yeah,
All
and
right.
Tiffany, if you end up wanting to have John facilitate or coordinate, keep the queue for you, just let us know. That's no problem.
Yep. You know what I'm going to do just in the while I'm working on this, I would love that because I can't see anything right now. I don't know what happened to this Zoom screen. So if you all could, if John could just do that, just as we're getting started with the discussion, I apologize. I will work on this and then I'll be back, but I'm here.
Okay.
I won't be leaving. I'm just going to be okay. All right.
Okay, we can see you, and so just give us a thumbs up when you want to take back control.
Perfect. Thank you.
So we're going to move on to the next item, which is growth monitoring annual report draft and the draft report updated job details reports. Heather.
Yeah, so first, there's a couple things. There's the updated jobs data, which I'll touch on, and then Elena is going to touch on housing sales data. But before we do that, and then we'll talk about the format of the report, and we have some specific questions to ask you. But before we do that, I just wanted to acknowledge that there's been a couple times where, including in the detailed data tables, I just noticed a typo of mine, and we just kind of want to acknowledge that we're stretched really thin right now, and we just want to apologize and just appreciate your patience, as we have not been able to give kind of that multiple QA review of written materials for the ETAC. The data is being reviewed, that's being reviewed, and actually that's why the jobs data is updated, is because we caught something, and same with the housing sales data. But the written materials are not as polished as we would typically like them. So, you know, we just wanted to acknowledge that and just appreciate your patience. There's a lot of things flying at us. We've talked about them at this group, climate friendly and equitable communities. We're having to start where we've already started the UGB update with the BLI, which will be coming to you later this summer, actually. And so anyway, there's just a lot going on, and we're short staffed. We're not fully staffed. So I just wanted to acknowledge that and appreciate your time, because I know you're all volunteers, and we don't want to waste your time. So thank you for your patience. So actually, Elena, do you want to go ahead and talk about the housing?
Sure.
And
Sure.
Okay, great.
So we have reviewed, the data that's in the report with you along the way over last few months. But some of the data that we hadn't included yet was the housing sales data. And so I will share. Ah. Sorry. Oops. Nope. Sorry, my mouse doesn't love me. Okay. So updated the table here with median sales price by housing type, which is the ARLID data that we have used in the comprehensive report as well. Wanted to note that we changed single family dwelling to single unit detached, and then we changed single family attached to townhouses to match the new verbiage from middle housing changes. When I was reviewing this data, and the reason why it didn't come to you originally was I noticed that some of the historical data or previous year's data was a little bit different when I was looking at it for the 2022 year. And basically ended up chatting with the tax assessor's office, and they did some data cleanup, which recategorized some sales. So maybe something that was in 2 to 4 dwellings is now more properly categorized as a townhouse. Kind of little data cleanup like that they did, and that affected the numbers pretty minimally, but we were trying to figure out kind of what had changed there, and that's why this is coming to you a little bit later. But generally the categories have stayed the same, and we now have both the 2021 full year 2021 and 2022 data here. So that's included in the report. And as well as the chart that reflects that as well. That is accompanied by the other housing sales costs charts like median household income and rent and cost burden renters and owners. So just wanted to flag that because that is new data. In the data details that we provided to you all with the annual report, I have not updated that yet to include the housing costs data, but I will be doing that, and then also including a footnote just to note that some of the previous years have changed because of that data cleanup that the assessor's office did. So does anybody have any thoughts or questions about that?
I don't see anybody's hands raised.
Okay. I am gonna go ahead and stop sharing then.
Okay, thanks, Selena. So there were a couple things in the report that we put some comments about, but I think what I'm going to do is also go to the data details sheet first and just talk about the jobs change that is in the jobs growth rate change that is in the detailed tables that we put a comment about. So let me do that. Okay, so let's see. Is that big enough? Let me make it a little bit bigger. How's that? Can everybody see that okay? All right. So we put this in track changes so that you could see the change. It's actually a pretty simple issue that happened, but it's a little complicated to explain. So just to step back a little bit, when we did the UGB analysis back in 2012, we looked both at jobs from that were covered by unemployment insurance. And so we've talked about that here. Most of the time that most of our charts reflect the number of jobs in Lane County or in Eugene that are that we call covered jobs. So they're covered from employment insurance. And that's because that comes from the state of Oregon. It's reported from employers. And so it's a known number. But when we were doing the UGB analysis, there is a segment of jobs that are not covered. And we've talked about that here, that are not covered by employment insurance. And that isn't a known number because there's no reporting mechanism for that. And so previously, when jurisdictions have tried to get at what's an estimate of not covered jobs to give you a total jobs estimate. There's different ways to calculate it, but one of the simplest ways is to say, okay, well, we actually do know kind of how many total jobs there are in Lane County. We just don't have them for Eugene. And so you can take the percentage of not covered jobs compared to the total jobs in Lane County and apply that same percentage to Eugene. And so bump Eugene's jobs up by that same percentage. As you can imagine, that's not perfect. Lane County jobs are different than Eugene's jobs. Eugene is the economic center of Lane County. So, you could kind of argue it both ways. Anyway, long story short, that's what we did during the UGB. We looked at both of them. And so when we first started doing growth monitoring and we were doing the growth rate chart, we had that calculation in there for total jobs instead of just covered jobs, like all the rest of the charts and everything else we reviewed in the comprehensive report. And I caught that this time, again, like Elena did, from looking at last year's data and comparing it to this year's and kind of going, well, wait a minute, what's going on here? And so I spoke with Echo Northwest, who is our consultant, our go-to, our lifeline on growth monitoring when we have some of these questions. And she said, Beth Goodman is who, as you know, we work with. And she said that, yeah, I wouldn't use that anymore. There really isn't a need, especially for monitoring. It might be something, and this was something we flagged in the comprehensive report under recommendations, that we want to get better data around those not covered jobs, but we don't have it. And so for growth monitoring, what we have right now that we can squarely say that we have is the covered jobs data. So what we did, or what I did is that footnote explains that. Hopefully that made sense. And this chart is covered jobs now. And that matches all of the other charts that, like I said, that we have around jobs data. And I also went back and made sure that, you know, you probably saw some of those footnotes where I said, okay, what we reported in the comprehensive report was this rate, like right here for 2012 through 2018. In the comprehensive report, we said that the growth rate in Eugene was 3.13. I went back and redid that, which is why it's in track changes, to be just covered jobs, so that we're comparing apples to apples going in this report and going forward. And so it, you know, it's not a huge difference, but it's, you know, it's noticeable, and I want to make sure it's right. So I don't know, maybe I have too many footnotes about this, but it definitely is something I wanted to make sure people were aware of. And again, this is all covered jobs. So we're kind of back on track with apples to apples. So are there any questions about that, or concerns, or was any of that not clear in the data details or in the report? Oh boy. All right. That was a tie. I have no idea.
Okay, we'll go with Dennis first, then Phil, and then I
Phil,
think
why
I've got
don't
a
you
question
go?
too.
I've got a more general question.
Yeah, mine is actually pretty minimal. If you go back, scroll back up to the chart that you had, general and overarching data job growth. And this is just an observation. I think it totally makes sense what you're telling us. I understand the rationale. I think you explain it well in the footnotes and so forth. But to the casual reader, when you look at this chart, the first thing you see, employment growth rate. Below that, employment growth rate forecast for Lane County. To, you know, without sort of really driving into the text, what's the difference between the two? And maybe if it just simply says employment growth rate, if I understand what you're saying, right, it's employment growth rate for Eugene. Is that correct?
It is.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
it's
it might
employment
be-
growth rate for Eugene.
Yeah, to distinguish that data of the 1.4% and now 1.9% from Lane County, which was 1.4% and now 1.2%. Just, it might make it clearer if you just simply said where it says employment growth rate
right
at
here.
the top right there, if it said employment growth rate for Eugene, just so that you distinguish between the two sets of data. One is higher, one is lower.
Sure. And I
Just a
think
suggestion.
yeah, no, that's great. I've struggled with that a little bit because I think it might be the only one. Yeah, like everything else is for Eugene. So we didn't put
Right.
Eugene, but in this case, it probably does make sense because you have the Lane County right below it. So yeah, and it's, yep, okay, great.
Yeah, the first time I went through it, I had to pause and read
Kinda
it a couple of
hiccup.
times to understand. I think what the difference is was one is Eugene, one is Lane County, and elsewhere you don't have that distinction. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Okay, great, thank you.
Dennis.
Yeah, mine's a more general question about just in terms of, you know, kind of the scope of data. As I read through all this, I noted we began with, you know, employment data, and then we ended up with employment related land data. is there any place where there's any assessment of employment density, if you will? If we're looking at land use issues, how many jobs per acre kinds of things would seem to be a factor. If I was a policymaker, I'd want to know.
Yep.
I'm wondering, because I found myself wondering, is the less than projected development of commercial and other employment related property because there's greater density in those employment settings? More online purchases, so you don't need mortar buildings and less parking lot. And, is the nature of manufacturing changing in a world of large scale digital printing? Those kinds of differences would seem to reflect how much land you need to have a good solid employment base. And so just that broader question, is there any such data like that that's trackable?
So yeah, we actually had that in the comprehensive report. So there is a section on that. I can at some point point you back to that. And you're getting a little bit at one of the, I think, questions that I'm gonna have when we start talking about the format and what's in the annual report, is that we don't have everything in the annual report that we looked at in the comprehensive report. The employment density data takes, it's a multi-step process in order for us to get that allocated to Eugene, and then allocated it even further to geographic areas by zone. And we just did sample sites. And so we actually pay LCOG to help allocate Lane County data to Eugene, and then it has to be aggregate or disaggregated through GIS to these different areas, and then do a density analysis. So we're not planning on doing that for annual reports, but the next comprehensive report will have that updated again.
No, that's helpful in terms of my understanding that data point's out there, but I understand you can't do everything in an annual report. That's helpful. And I'm still learning how to read these, so.
Yeah, and we can point you to that. There's probably going to be a number of those things as we go through this, that it's like, oh, should we include that or not? Is it okay that we just do that every 5 years? Because we need to also make this kind of manageable for staff to be able to do that. And as you can see, it's already a bit of a challenge. So I think that's a great segue, if that's okay, to start talking about the report.
Actually, I've got a question on this section.
Okay.
So I think you've presented it well. I'm wondering if it might be advantageous to give some examples of non-reported job types. So say it's an Uber driver, or say, if we could put a couple of examples of what those types of jobs are, that might be helpful. Because as of right now, it's kind of like, well, what is a non-covered job? And for me, that would also help, because it would help distinguish that, are they large if there were a large employer that would come in with non-covered jobs, is that actually something that would happen, right? So giving some examples of what non-covered jobs, even down in the footnotes, say, this is what a non-covered job might be. And then I just had one more question, and it's not regarding it goes down a little bit further as to employment by category. And I just am wondering what category healthcare is. Is that commercial non-retail? Is that?
Yes, I think that is right.
Healthcare would be in commercial non-retail.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. And if you, this is also one thing we didn't do in the annual report, but if you go back to the comprehensive report, there's a table that has these 4 employment categories, and then underneath it, there's the actual employment sectors that are from the state data. So you can see that breakout.
Thank you.
Okay. So just a little precursor. So per our previous discussions, we really reduced the amount, even though maybe it's still 42 pages. We really reduced the amount of content in the annual report compared to the comprehensive report. Just as a reminder, the comprehensive report with the appendix, well, even without the appendices, I think just the report was like 100 pages. And so we really reduced the amount of content in the annual report compared to the comprehensive report. We did honestly try to make it more of a report card approach like we talked about. But it was pretty hard to do that. We found ourselves going, oh, we need to keep this data in there. And oh, I want to talk about, and this is interesting, and that sort of thing. And so the ways that we tried to make it more condensed is that the annual report only reports on key data. And so that's, you can see the list of what we previously identified as key data. You saw that we actually moved this table, this comparison table up front. Whereas in the comprehensive report, it was further back. I can't scoot that over anymore. But this is the full list. And so there's even more data like employment density that is not in this table. And then when you actually look at the writing in the report, there's even some data in this table that we don't talk about. So we have all the key data comparisons in here, but we don't even talk about all of it. And it's still 42 pages. We also stripped out all analysis about, as you know, we took out any discussion about trends. They're still in the charts, but we really limited any discussion about that. We didn't do a lot of pontification, as you know, that I would say about why things are happening. That's really not the intent of the annual report. It's that report card idea, but not why things are happening. And then, you know, for the detail table or the data detail tables, these are again excerpts that we took from the appendices, but we opted to not completely do the redo the appendices. There's a lot more in the appendices, like a glossary. Actually, there was a glossary in the report and in the appendices that we didn't include. This is just the data that has been updated kind of for transparency's sake, so that people can understand if they do want to dive into the data, but without us having to completely redo the appendices. Like I said, it's still longer than I think we anticipated, but it also felt pretty manageable. You know, and I think we have it in a format that it's pretty easy to update. Certainly the data review is what takes the longest, but updating the annual report in the format that it's in was pretty easy for us to do. So I think a couple of questions I have are, did we strike the right balance on the detail for an annual report? Are there any key pieces that are missing? And we can talk about those. And then are there any pieces that could get dropped? And you may have other things you want to share in your review. That would be great. But those are some of the key questions that I have. So with that, I will just turn it back over.
Tiffany, are you back online? She's
Yes, I'm back. Can you all hear me?
okay. Yes, we can. You're in charge.
I can see you all. So do folks have, I don't see any hands. So Heather, are you looking for these, you're looking for this feedback?
Yeah, I mean, if people don't have any questions or specific okay, there we go. I was gonna say, it's, the other thing we could do is like, do people generally, you could do a thumbs up if people, or a sideways if people, about those questions, like whether or not it struck the right level of detail, that kind of thing.
Okay, I have Sue and then Phil in that order. So I'll go ahead and let Sue go, and then Phil, you can go next.
Okay, I just want to comment on the format, actually. I mean, I think the content is fine. The format is fantastic because it's like a snapshot. You can actually look really quickly and see what the big points are that you want to know about. And if you want to go a little bit further, there's more information there. So I think from a public perception, the format is just really excellent.
Thank you. Phil and then Howard and then John. Does Phil disappear? What happened? I don't see him. Oh, now you're there. Go ahead.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, I did something where I screwed things up, sorry. Let's see. Yeah, so far as this format goes, I think this is great. And when you think about like it's really the first 15 pages that has all of these tables. So it's not even as long as you were saying of 42 pages or 30 something pages. It's really the first 15 pages has all those tables. You can thumb through it and you can look at these different metrics and you could say, well, how are we between, and I think the change that you're doing is you identified there, change between the adopted forecast and the most recent year, even though you've also included one column, which is the prior year information, right? So kind of year to year, but then it's really between the adopted, I mean, the difference that we're seeing in the far right column, is that change higher, lower or not, is between the far left column and then the 2022 annual reporting period monitoring data. Is that right? Yeah.
Exactly. And we struggled with that, I'll be honest. So I'm glad you addressed that.
I think looks great. And I mean, I think that's fine. And I think it's understandable. I just wanted to verify that I saw it right. I'll ask one question to the rest of the group as well as the staff, because I did thumb through, and I think there was one point, and this is a pagination thing. Okay, sorry, but I studied journalism, and that, I don't know, sort of it carries over. But in the bottom of page 9, you've got cost burden households. And because we have the formatting of the footnotes on the bottom of the page, it truncates where you've got that data, which is saying cost burden households, and right below it is all households. And then you have to go to the next page and it's renter households and owner households. Then you get to the next issue, which is severely cost burden, and it's got a breakdown that's not, it's the highlighted parts. And I just wonder, would it be better to put the footnotes kind of toward the end, and that way you can paginate it so that you keep all things together? So the highlighted topic, which is cost burden households, and then you break down the information, which is all of them renter and owner occupied, and they're all grouped together. And I don't know if even there's a way to kind of paginate the footnote otherwise, to do it so that you just keep all those things together. So that way people are understanding that they're grouped and they're all talking about the same thing on the same page. That's just a formatting thing, sorry.
We'll mess around with it. Yeah, the other thing I was trying to remember if we ended up doing this, and it might have been this one that I tried that, where I played with dropping this to the next page. So just making this a new, adding a lot more space. That would be the other way we could deal with it. But yeah, point taken. Okay, Howard, and then followed by John in that order.
Yeah, I like the format, and it's an incredible amount of data, and so to be able to distill this down to a concise report that's not intimidating and that it actually might get read by people, I think is really good. So I like to compliment staff on pulling together. I think the summary tables and all that are great. It's a quick read, and I think it hits the right level of detail, and it's I think very concise and uh, comprehensive. So I like it. And I know you got some editorial stuff to do, and that's fine. I don't I'm sure you'll catch all those. I didn't really go through it that carefully to catch all those things, but I think you did an outstanding job.
Thank you. Great, John.
Yeah. Again, yeah, I really like the way it's coming together. We're starting to see what we hoped to see when we started this whole thing is, where are we seeing things the way we thought we would? Where are the things that are really out of whack? And where are opportunities and tools to help us move forward in the next phase? And the other thing that jumped out to me is, I guess there's a lot of rhetoric in the community about a lot of the issues that are covered in this report, housing availability, cost burden rent type things. And there's a lot of rhetoric out there. And the thing that this shows is actual hard data. And to be able to have that and say, well, yes, that there is a percentage that's rent burdened, or that, whatever it is, we've got hard numbers now that are year to year to year. And we can say, hey, we are making progress on median income, and we are making progress, although it may be small, on, a percentage or two of rent burdens or where it is. But having these actual numbers that are quantified and are going forward year to year can help the public discourse by having true hard facts rather than anecdotal reading. So I think it's great. I think the work that you guys have done is fabulous. And like Phil said, for the common person reading through these first charts and saying, okay, we're above, we're below, we're meet, and having the percentages there really stands out. If you want to dig in, you go a little bit further to the charts. If you want to dig in even further than that, you go to the comprehensive report. And if you really want to geek out, you go to the appendix. So it's levels of engagement. And the thing is great, when you're going to get questioned, when you present this to policymakers and things like that, they'll ask questions, and you've been in this for so long that you'll be able to say, oh no, yeah, we've got the answer to that. It's in Appendix 3, page 4, and bam, there's the answer. It's not like what is being built, what's not being built. So I'm really encouraged by this whole process, and it's finally starting to show the hard work that you guys have put into it, and will be able to be used as a really effective tool going forward. So I want to just say thanks.
Didn't know if anyone wanted to comment. I do have Sue's hand up, so if you want to go ahead, Sue.
So John just reminded me of something I thought about a few minutes ago, which is that the longevity of the staff is just an incredible bonus to this whole process. The fact that Heather's been here so long, I mean, it's remarkable. And I can't imagine somebody coming in and trying to work on this and have a perspective who has only been there a year or two. I mean, I think it's really a testimony to the quality of this work that Heather has been here so long. Good job, Heather.
Well, one thing I would say about thank you all. These comments are great. I'm so glad to hear that this is moving in the right direction. You know, Elena wasn't here in the beginning, and I think what is awesome is that we have been able to, I think that this work is going to help staff actually be able to step into stuff like Elena has done. She's stepped right in and helped us get to a place where you can actually understand the data, and that staff can understand the data. Like, we're doing training manuals on how to analyze the data, because it can't all be up here, and it's not now, and that feels really good. So it's super awesome, and I can't wait to share some of these comments with our IT staff because they put a lot of work into this as well. So,
Well, great job, Phil, and then Dennis.
Yeah, just, I mean, I think what you're going to be, you know, you'll have different audiences for this, but this is great in that I think it does cover different audiences and at different levels of depth or engagement that they want to go through. Like John was saying, trying to anticipate, it's almost like when you do a thesis or something, and there's always going to be part of it that's going to be, well, what's next and what's more analysis it will need and so forth. And you kind of allude to that in the efficiency measures. And so I think you make reference to how, like some of the STC stuff, you know, there's more data to be compiled or more information that you don't need to plug it in here. You don't need to shove it all in, but you're already thinking about what are questions that policymakers are going to give you, or the community at large, or some random people, us, might come up to you with, we want more information about this. And you've set a baseline now by which you can go and get that information, or you've already started on the first of many years of analysis that will determine if trends and what's working and what's not working. And that's the whole essence of why you're even called upon to do this work. So I think you're doing a fabulous job, and it's cool having both the longevity that you have, Heather, and Sue, and Rick and John, that have been, you know, in the weeds on this stuff for so long, and Elena, who's got this expertise and a fresh set of eyes, and Dennis, Mark, Howard, Tiffany, and everybody else who's kind of newer, to really kind of look at this with a little bit of a different lens and a little more of a different, fresh set of eyes too. So I think this is a great combination of different folks working on this. So thanks a lot. Good work.
Thanks, Phil. Dennis, go ahead.
Yeah, and I just wanted to kind of affirm the kudos, but also that sense that Phil started to bring out about audiences, and partially recognize the reality of audiences is, you know, Joe and Jane Citizen are not likely to wade into this, but it's policymakers, and those of us who are trying to advise policymakers. For example, in my role as someone on the Sustainability Commission, where I'm looking at density issues and parking lot sizes, which have, you know, significant environmental impact. The data is there for those of us who are really gonna wade into it. But, you know, a citizen advocate who feels like they have a perspective that they think they know what's happening on housing, there's data to give them clear facts. So kudos, and again, expanding what Phil said, for multiple audiences, I think it works.
Those are all really nice comments, you guys, and I will just echo that the staff is incredible. I know you guys are under a tremendous amount of pressure with all kinds of things that have been thrown at you, and I have no idea how you get it all done. So, but I also appreciate this group and all of the diversity that you all bring in thought, and the longevity of the group, because I, you know, as a new person, I will agree with Phil that it is very helpful to have some of the more seasoned minds that have been looking at these things for years, literally. So anyhow, I'll just kind of echo what everyone else has said and applaud you. And I, again, apologize for all my computer decided it needed to update all the software. So it was restarting and I just gave up and went to a different computer. If we're ready, we can go ahead and move on to the next agenda item, or I guess Heather and Elena, you tell me.
Yeah. So I guess I'd like to just get a general, I mean, as was mentioned, we've got some typos. You guys have made some great suggestions here. We'll update, we'll give a final look through. Certainly if there's any additional formatting things that come to your mind, feel free to let us know. But we will do a more thorough walkthrough of both documents before we send them off to Planning Commission and City Council. But yeah, if I could get just like a general thumbs up. I didn't hear anything that needed to be added or removed. Phil's already voting. But yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, I would say, folks, if you want to just weigh in with a thumb, I won't call it an official vote, but I found it very easy to understand and didn't seem to miss anything.
Great. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thanks, everyone. This is all you all. I'm glad you guys brought that up because we can't do it without you. And here we are on another lovely sunny evening, and here you guys are. You're amazing. So thank you for all of your eyes on this and your thoughtful comments. It's much appreciated.
Okay, well, would you all like to move into the topic of the meetings discussion for future meetings? Does that make sense?
Let me ask one more question to Heather.
So this moves on to Planning Commission and then to City Council. I just see this as a much more valuable document to keep internal. Have you thought about sharing this to other partners throughout the community? I mean, I'm thinking with my eWeb hat on right now, some of this data would be helpful for planning on substations and this and that. And Lane County, I'm sure, would be interested in these types of, it's such good work to be able to just have it in-house and not be available to some of our other partners that might be able to glean some really good ideas from it. I don't know if it's appropriate or not to share it with other community partners, but I just think it's too valuable just to keep in-house.
That's great to hear. Yeah, I can, a couple things. I mean, we will make a big splash on the webpage about that. And we're still working on our data dashboard. So we've had to kind of put that on hold because of software updates that we're still working on related to middle housing. But we will do that. We'll make a splash in Envision Eugene newsletter, the e-newsletter. And I think some of our partners do get that newsletter. Certainly feel free to share it. I think that's totally fine. Like I said, it's going to be on our webpage. Some of the data that's in there, we are coordinating internally as well. So like the housing implementation pipeline, the program or kind of umbrella that tries to put together all of our different housing actions and come up with a 5-year goal for housing and homelessness. It also is doing an annual report and actually does, I think, a 6-month report email to council. And so we're coordinating to make sure that we are using the same numbers, which was one of our goals with growth monitoring, that we're not reporting different numbers, that we have consistency. And so that's really good. I haven't thought about sending it specifically to Lane County or eWeb, but I think we can definitely talk about that. And like I said, if you've got your networks and you think it's valuable, please feel free to use it.
Bill, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I mean, there used to be a, like a planning directors roundtable of Springfield, Lane County and Eugene that would get together monthly, I think, and maybe even LCOG as well. I don't know if that still happens or not, but I think that'd be, I think that's maybe kind of the level that maybe John's talking about. It may be even more significant for, the eWeb planning and leadership level at the staff level, and other utility providers in the school district, even for that matter. I mean, this is great source data that has regional significance and far beyond just the boundaries of your department or organization. And because y'all all touch upon one another in the way that you work, or this data should be not just sort of sent by an email, or here's this newsletter we did or something like that, but really be able to have meetings with one another. And I hope that still happens. And if it doesn't, maybe you could, staff could schedule something like, you don't need to have a big presentation about it, but let's just talk about some of the highlights of findings, piece of work we did. It's important, why it's and how it's important for your organization as well. So I think it's a great thing you brought up, John. Thanks for doing that.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, we'll dig into that a little bit more. I don't know about those meetings, but yeah, we'll dig into that a little bit more for sure.
Heather, I can probably give you some information a little bit about some of the partner meetings that I am part of throughout Eugene and Springfield, in the county, and mostly just the governments that all meet. So, okay. Yeah, great suggestion, John. Do we want to move into the discussion about meetings, and are we ready for that?
Yeah, it's just a short update, really. So most of you responded that you were willing to meet in person. Nobody said anything that the 4 meetings in person a year, didn't sound doable. I didn't hear any major concerns. I think one of the things we want to make sure of is that we have the hearing assistance technology is in tip-top shape, because I think that's been one of the benefits for sure of meeting virtually. And I think that the other part of it is that, from a technology, it's kind of like we need to figure out the technology in general, because I think even if we ask folks to meet in person about 4 times a year, there are going to be instances where some people can't make it, even though, ideally everybody would be here at that meeting. And so, we also, for public meetings record law, I think I mentioned, or a public meetings law, that we are trying to follow that, even though we're not required to. And so we do want to provide a virtual option for the public as well. And so we still need to really figure out the technology. The 2 options are meeting back again in the Saul room, and that's where we want to make sure that we've got the meeting technology and the hearing loop technology dialed in, and Sue has graciously offered to help make sure that that is working. So we super appreciate that. And then the other option is meeting in the council work session room in the LCC building. That's where they work. Planning Commission is meeting there. I think that there's quite a bit of demand for that meeting room. And in both cases, we have to figure out the security part of it. And so there's some more logistical things that we're still trying to figure out. And actually, Yeah, anyway, so we will follow up with you. I think one of the things I just wanted to make sure is that there wasn't, I didn't hear anybody raise any concerns or hard concerns about the meeting day or the meeting time. I know there's never a good time. Some of you mentioned that while it's not an ideal time, we understand that there isn't necessarily a better time. So it's kind of the lesser of two evils. When we meet in person, we will feed you. We used to do that before. And I think we have budget for doing that about 4 times a year at least. And so we will definitely do that. But I just kind of wanted to circle back and make sure that this is generally working for folks. I think there are a couple people that have more conflicts for the more potential conflicts for the first Thursday. Phil, you might have a conflict. Okay, I think Counselor Ye also does. So we could potentially try to find a different backup night. But
Don't do it on my account, but it's a sort of an inherent conflict I have, but I can work around it probably.
okay. Okay, that's good to know. Thank you.
Yeah, Heather, thanks for all of that info. I think while I'll just share that while I am happy to be back in person and I appreciate that, and I like to, see everybody and interact in that sense, I do understand that there is, number one, a need to still be hybrid because for audience participation and all these other reasons. So you're still going to end up with the Zoom situation. Similar to, I know Planning Commission, we've been doing that, and some of us are there, some of us aren't. So either way, you have to do it. There's also costs involved. And I know it's also hard to find the room and the schedule and all those things. And so I will just say that I'm super flexible and whatever continues to work. And if folks can make it virtually easier for now, I think, I think we can continue to plug away just as we have been. So whatever, I just don't want to add more to your plates, knowing what you're all juggling right now. And I just think that I think there's times where we, would like to be together and be able to have these conversations, but at the same time, I think due to the nature of the meeting in the first place, it's actually, there's sort of a formality to it that you can't escape. And so it's not, I don't think there's as much lost by being virtual. If that makes sense.
And I think it's an ongoing process. I mean, right now, you mentioned that the council work session room is a tough room to book, but in about a week or so, there might be about 100,000 square feet new office space in a beautiful space down by the river that may have new technology within 8 or 9 months that may free up some of those types of things. So I think it's just a work in progress. If things look like the first half of the year it's tight and we can't do it, that's fine. This is working well, but again, I personally, and I apologize, I didn't respond to the poll, but I personally get a lot more out of meeting in person. It's just something that I personally feel I get more out of meetings in person. There's discussions before, during, and after the meeting that I think are valuable. So I like the idea of being able to do those on occasion.
Okay. Should we move on to next steps and upcoming meetings, or are we kind of just merging those topics together already?
I can't remember if it's on the agenda or not, but I was gonna say a little bit about recruitment.
Okay.
So unfortunately, we did not have a successful recruitment. There were a few folks who had applied. We ended up interviewing one of them and offering them a role on this committee. And they decided that they had taken on too many other volunteer opportunities and backed out. And so, I mean, I guess good news is that we do have our minimum still now. I think, as I mentioned during the recruitment process, I had reached out to the Oregon Builders Association, the Chamber, 1,000 Friends, organizations that had been represented on this group before. Didn't hear from any of them or get applicants from them. So there may be interest in the future when they have new folks on board or more capacity. And so we could do a recruitment, not necessarily with the fiscal year like the other boards and commissions, if we wanted to or needed to, if we lose anybody else, which hopefully we don't. But that's sort of the update for now, is that we will not have any new folks July 1.
Elena, I have a question. Would it be helpful if any of us could reach out? Because I know, if there's any entities in particular, because you mentioned a few that I'd be curious to know if you didn't get any response. I'd be curious to know if they had interest and just didn't respond, or, I mean, specifically the builders and anyhow.
Yeah. I mean, I think could be an ongoing conversation. Like if you have the capacity to want to reach out about it, I think it is something we could have, again, open the recruitment when we needed to or wanted to. But yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm happy to do that. But if there are any groups in particular, I'm about to undergo a transition job change, so I'm going to be back at the chamber. So maybe I could wear that hat as well. I know planning commission and whatnot, but so consider that the announcement. It's not a secret, but I'm returning to the chamber. So I will be pretty plugged in there, but I know that, home builders and some of the other groups, if there are groups in particular that there is an interest in participating in this work, I think that would be helpful just to kind of know. And then, what are the gaps that we're looking to fill, or what are the areas of background that might be helpful?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Have we reached out to the realtors?
No, not specifically. I had just, really targeted the organizations that have been represented on this group before, knowing that those folks had left recently. And
I think that, like, the home builders was going through a bit of a change, and then Alexis, when he left, didn't think that wasn't sure if and when they were going to fill his position. And so there's definitely some change going on at those organizations too that could have contributed. Not sure, but yeah, if anybody wants to shake trees, certainly. Again, not urgent, but also, we're open. So
Have you looked at entities like the Tenants Association or groups like that, that are certainly tracking housing issues? I know I shared some data that I gleaned from some of these meetings with NAACP's Housing Committee folks a while back. So there may be some of those less represented communities. I mean, I keep getting struck by the data that most of the people who live in Eugene are not homeowners. And that one I still can barely wrap around. And so is there a voice from those who don't as often engage in these kinds of conversations?
Yeah, and that's why I was thinking too about, students or faculty even at the university. And I don't know if is the enrollment kind of open, or is it sort of like other boards and commissions where it closes? It's closed until next whenever.
yeah, it's closed now. So the normal recruitment would be January through March is when the applications are open, and appointment for the next July 1. But I think if we heard from anyone that they were interested, that we could do a special recruitment process.
Well, and maybe an approach would be, as I'm sort of thinking out loud about it too, if we have entities or individuals we think might want to be represented, invite them to listen in, which is a good way to get a clue to what's going on. I mean, I spent the first few meetings kind of listening, figuring out what's going on, so that might be a good start. If we have entities we think might want to be represented, invite them to log in as public and see what it's about.
I think and Sue, you may want to back me up on this.
But I think as we move forward, especially when we start looking at, the buildable land inventory and the next round of these types of things, how important it was to have Thousand Friends and the home builders sitting at the same table and coming to conclusions that we moved forward in the process. I can't understate how important that was. Thousand Friends came to us and made some really good points on buildable lands that we ended up using in the UGB growth analysis, and having them and Ed sit at the same table really gave clout to the report that we put forward. And so I think that it would behoove us to reach out to them again and let them know how valuable their input was. And we really would like to see them put in an application again, because I think that helped carry the water and the validity of the report when you can have all people and both sides agreeing to it.
Okay. Oh, go ahead, Mark.
Yes, just listening to this whole collection of ideas, I just want to throw in some more here at this juncture that relate. One of them is that the neighborhood group, that's the River Road Santa Clara Neighborhood Organization, is unusually active, and I expect I'm sure they have an interest in what this group does. And I expect that would be a good place to explore for some participation. Kate Purley would be one player there, but there are others. And a second point, one of you mentioned in the possibility of involving U of O students or faculty. And the university has the School of 3 p.m. Planning, Public Policy, and Management. And I participated with them in the past, and they're all kind of blended in part also with architecture, landscape architecture, that is, as well as architecture, but where there are people there who are specifically involved in the academic side of this whole endeavor. And it's likely that there would be somebody there, or not just somebody, but a constituency there who would care about this kind of process. That is what ETAC does. In principle, but also have specific interest in the phenomenon as well as the specifics of what we do. And so that would be another place to make contact. That's all.
Thanks for everybody's comments.
Okay, what else under next steps and upcoming meetings? Dana?
Yeah, so I was gonna say deleted, we canceled the July meetings and the first Thursday, August meeting. I think our next scheduled meeting is the third Thursday in August. And we do anticipate meeting then, unless of course folks end up not having availability then, but we do anticipate our kicking off the conversation about the 2023 buildable lands inventory. A little bit of a refresher, but there's also been some things that have changed from the way we did it the last time, because every time we pull data, things change, and rules change at the state. And so every time we think we can just hit, which is never the case, but that we can just redo it, that is not the case. And so Thea will be back to kind of walk you guys through part 1 of the BLI methodology review. I don't think, Elena, we have an update on the data dashboard because we have been working on this software update for building permit data. The long and the short of it is that, you know, when we report dwellings, we've been reporting net new dwellings. So it takes into account dwellings that changed in use. So for instance, it was a dwelling and then it changed to an office, or it was an office and it changed to a dwelling, and demolitions. So trying to get at actual net new dwellings. And the way that the software was, we actually had change of use dwellings or dwellings that changed use and dwellings that were demoed in the same bucket. We weren't separating those out, but with the middle housing code amendments, because there really actually are, the code is working to incentivize changing the use of, say, a single unit house to a duplex without any demolition, or it's a duplex and they're adding 1 unit. So actually it changes the use of the duplex to a triplex because now there's certain, so just really trying to capture all of that has increased with the middle housing or at least the opportunity for that to happen has increased with the middle housing code amendments. So we found the need to have to to split those out and not have them in the same bucket, which those of you that have worked with software probably know that that is the last thing you want to do, is have a software structure that has things in this bucket and then need to separate them out. Not recommended, just from the background data structure in the software, but also then you have to take that data and migrate historical data to those new fields where it was combined before. And that's, I mean, this has been kind of the easy part. There's like a whole bunch of other stuff going on with it anyway. So until this software update is done and tested, we can't put new data in specifically related to middle housing and getting that net number. And so we haven't actually been able to review building permit data that's come in since 2023. So the good news is you'll be looking at BLI stuff while hopefully we will be reviewing 2023 data, and because now we have a backlog of that. And then also hopefully at that time we'll be getting some pages up for the data dashboard. So that's what's going on. We're all kind of pulling our hair out about it and are looking forward to it being done. Yeah.
Okay. Anybody have anything, questions, comments? No.
Good luck in your new job.
Oh, thank you. I'll still be here, so.
What is it? What is your new job?
I am coming over as the Vice President of Policy and Community Development.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's a new position.
And thank you for staying on the EETAC.
Of course. Okay, well, I am at the end of the agenda, so I have our next meeting is in August. That's still correct, and then September, so we have both of those on Zoom tentatively. That's probably the plan, unless anything changes, but I think people should plan for that. All right, well, if there's nothing else, you guys ready for me to? Okay, I'll go ahead and adjourn our meeting a little early today, so go out and enjoy the sunshine. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.